So welcome everyone. Welcome to the Pearl series. I hope everybody is doing okay at these challenging and difficult times. Today, Pearl presents Ashtanga Yoga. You know, yoga is about union with the higher self, and only like can unite with like. Oil cannot mix with water, and we know that, right? So first, we need to become pure like the source. In this webinar, we will learn to use Ashtanga Yoga, all the 8 limbs of yoga, culminating in the oneness, and to arrive at the original state of oneness. As we understand the relationship and significance, we will realize that they are the fundamental principles and tools that we could use to reboot our entire life. Now, for the first timers, we always extend a very, very special and again, a very warm welcome to the Pearl series. Pearl stands for Practical, Educational, Actionable, Rejuvenating Lifestyle Webinars. It's a monthly webinar series that's sponsored by the Heartfulness Institute that's been offering heart-based relaxation and meditation to all those who are interested, completely free of charge. Heartfulness Institute has been present for about 75 years, and we have several million practitioners around the world, about 10,000 trainers again around the world who offer their time and effort to train us into this heartfulness kind of meditation. It's a very heart-based meditation, and I myself have been doing this for about 22 years now, and this is really something that I value, and it's quite precious, and it's transformed my life in many ways that I can't imagine. So I'm always happy to share it with my friends and family, and welcome them into this meditation practice. So if you're interested to learn this kind of meditation, do get in touch with us. Do visit our website. There's some great resources in there, webinars, and particularly at COVID times, there's several ways that we could connect at this time of social distancing. And again, do visit our website at heartfulness.org. And as well, you will see that you could visit our website, a webinar website page in there. If you click on the webinars tab in the heartfulness.org webpage, as I was saying, we've had several speakers, renowned speakers in the Pearl series, and they've been talking on, very hot and happening topics, and we've really benefited from these webinars. And this has been going on for about 4 years now, and we've had about 60K viewerships so far. And we, as a team, we aspire to touch more hearts. Now, quick housekeeping before we get started. This Pearl webinar is going to go live on Facebook pages, which is a Heartfulness main Facebook page, as well as a Heartfulness webinars page. And we will have a Q&A session after our speaker's presentation towards the end of this webinar. So please stay tuned for that. And you can interact with Elizabeth and ask your questions to her. And as you can see, this is being recorded, and we will upload the recording in our website at a later date. Now, without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker to you all. She's Elizabeth Denley, and she's a very good friend of mine and a wonderful, wonderful speaker as well. She holds a doctorate of philosophy in biological sciences from the University of Sydney, Australia, 1981. Elizabeth has been involved in values and ethics education and training since 1996 for both children and adults, with a particular emphasis on communication and teamwork. Since 1999, Elizabeth also worked with the international companies as managing director for the Australian operations of 2 global IT companies with their main development centers in India, and subsequently her own consulting business. She's a mother of 2, a musician and a writer, and spends much of her time these days working on publications for Heartfulness. So how are you, Elizabeth? How are things there in Kanha?
Very happy to be here, Lakshmi. It's very hot here in Kanha, but it's also very calm the rains have started coming, so everything is woken up. The greenery's woken up around, and it's quite a magical time. So it's good here. We're not stressed in any way.
Uh-huh.
We're in a bit of a bubble from the COVID crisis that's going on everywhere. But still, of course, it doesn't lessen the seriousness of it.
Mm.
We just happen to be a little bit more protected than most people.
Yeah. Good to know. Good to know, Elizabeth. Good to know that you're hanging in there and everything is
Yes.
okay. Yeah. I've seen some lovely pictures of the greenery in Kanha there
Oh,
recently.
it's amazing at the moment. It's so beautiful. The rains came a bit early, so everything's just bouncing with life.
Yeah. Wow. Lucky you.
Yeah.
But I don't know how often you go out to, see that and enjoy it, right? But
We're starting to more. Things have been pretty tight. We've been housebound for the last few months, but things are loosening up just now, like they are in many parts of the world.
Mhm.
So, thank goodness. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Thank goodness, actually. Hope, we'll come out of it all absolutely okay.
Yeah, I had a webinar today with doctors who are working at one of the big hospitals in Hyderabad, in one of the COVID-19 hospitals,
Mhm.
doing stress management and some fear management, fear detox modules with them. And I was really touched. I
Mhm.
mean, my heart goes out to the people who are working on the front line,
Yeah.
helping people, because their lives are really fraught with stress at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt very blessed, but also very happy to be doing that, because in Heartfulness, we're doing a lot of that work at the moment.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Even this webinar, at times when we're all housebound, as everybody is going through, it's a different kind of stress.
Yeah.
And really, we could use this time to, slow down, relook at our life, and reboot our life. So really,
Right.
thank you. Heartfelt thanks for doing this webinar for this, and I'm really looking forward to it. So the stage is all yours now.
Okay. Thank you, Lakshmi. Hello, everyone. Ashtanga Yoga. It sounds like a very esoteric thing, but really it's not. Really, it is so simple. Because what are we looking at? We're looking at holistic lifestyle. We're
Mhm.
looking at wellness in all aspects of our lives. Body, mind, and soul, you can say, or body, mind, and spirit. And that's all that Ashtanga is. And what happened was that a few thousand years ago, before Christ, there was a great rishi by the name of Patanjali. And he decided to take all the known knowledge of yoga that had existed for thousands of years and compile it all into a very simple system. So he was a great researcher, you can say, a yogic researcher back then. And so what he did was he took all the yogic principles, everything from even before recorded history, and he started to compile it, and he came up with these 8 limbs or 8 steps of yoga that allow you to live a holistic lifestyle. So it's a great, absolutely great system for rebooting your life, as Lakshmi said. What's happened since then with Heartfulness is that yoga has done another leap forward in the last 100 years or so. And so these terms that we're going to talk about today with Ashtanga Yoga have been brought up into the modern world. Excuse me. So I'm going to relate some of this to Heartfulness and to modern yoga of all sorts. But this codification, these 8 steps are still very, very valid today. So we're going to go through them one by one and see how they impact our life. And then at the end, normally we would do a relaxation and a meditation for you. But what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to walk through all 8 steps into the meditation at the end of the session. And then after that, we'll come back for some Q&A. So 8 steps, what are they? Very simply, we start with yama. It says good conduct here, but actually it has another definition that I like even better. So what is yama? It's the removal of all the unwanted behaviors and tendencies in us, getting rid of all those habits and yucky things we don't like about ourselves. Niyama is the opposite. Niyama is to inculcate noble qualities, good values. Then we have the third one, asana, which is all about the physical body, all about posture and our physical systems, all our energetic systems that run through the human body and how we take care of them. Pranayama, the next one, is about our breath and about our energetic body, how we maintain it, how we look after it, and how we keep it in balance. The fifth step is Prachahar, which is where we start to go towards the side of yoga that's to do with our inner development. And Prachahar is to withdraw the senses inwards, away from the outside world, and turn them inwards so that we start to look at the inner universe instead of the outer universe. So this is like, you can say, the pivotal middle part of Ashtanga Yoga. The first four are much more to do with the outward world, our behavior, our physical body, our breathing, etc. Pratyahara starts to turn us inwards. And then the next three steps of Ashtanga Yoga, which are Dharan, Dhyan, and Samadhi, are what we do in meditation. And so we'll talk about them all together. And in fact, Patanjali called them samyama, the three steps together. So we're just going to go through bit by bit through this and see how it relates to overall wellness. Next slide, please, Lakshmi. So let's start with yama. This is the removal of all the things that block us, all the things that are our complexities, the heaviness in our system, the habits that we don't like about ourselves. And the very first one of these is known as Ahimsa. Many of you will have heard of this term. It means non-violence. It means basically to reach a stage where you don't have any sort of irritation, anger, frustration with anyone or anything in this universe. So it's quite hilarious, really, because this first step of yoga, the very first step of the first limb, if we can achieve this, I think we've achieved the whole thing. So it's not something to treat lightly. It was something very much valued by the Buddha, also by Christ, by almost any saintly or spiritual teacher who, or even non-religious people, non-spiritual people who practice pacifism. It's basically saying don't hurt anything else in the universe unless you really have to. Do your best not to hurt anything, anyone, any plant, any animal, etc. It's quite a tall order. So to do this, we have to really work on ourselves. We have to overcome all sorts of things, not just anger, aggression, violence, and all the heavy-duty things that we would consider the opposite of non-violence, but even simple things like getting irritated by something, or being dismissive of something, dismissive of another person, ignoring them, not including them, all these things. Anything that could hurt anything. And of course, it has a huge impact on our relationship to our environment and the current status of climate change and COVID-19 that we're going through at the moment. So it's a very, very big one of the yamas to start with. And there are certain techniques in heartfulness that we use to work upon this, as there are in most religions, most spiritual practices. You may look for your own, but it's definitely something that needs attention if you want a holistic lifestyle. You can't meditate and aim for a peaceful, happy life and still be getting angry with your kids. Not really angry. I mean, sometimes you may have to show some discipline, but in your heart is what I'm talking about. If anything still irritates you, then you're nowhere, because this is the very first step. So it's worth thinking about. The second of the yamas is also, if we can reach this, we've reached the goal pretty much. It's called Satya in yoga, and it's all about truthfulness. Initially, on a worldly level, you can say that that's truthfulness in terms of showing ourselves in our real colors, saying what we mean, meaning what we say. All these things that are about authenticity, transparency, lack of complexities. But at the highest level, it means to aspire for the truth, the absolute reality. And of course, that's a very tall order, because effectively that absolute reality is the goal of any spiritual life and the goal of yoga. So again, the second step of yama is telling us to remove everything that will block us coming towards truthfulness. The third of the yamas is asteya, honesty, non-stealing, not taking anything that belongs to anyone else. And of course, again, the meaning is a lot more than simply not telling a lie. It's also, in terms of environmental conservation, it's not using anything more than we need, whether that's water, electricity, food, anything. So again, around asteya, there's a very large context that we look at. And I urge all of you to go and study these in more detail if you're interested in them. But as you can see already, when we're looking at yama, we're looking at ethics, our character development, and the principles that are important to live a holistic, simple life. The next one, the fourth one, is often misunderstood, brahmacharya, or moderation of the senses. It's often translated as celibacy, which of course, if you live in a family life and you want to have kids, is not a very practical yama to follow. But it's all around moderation. It's about not looking at even sex or any other aspect of moderation in a way that's extreme. It's about using and conserving resources wisely. And then the last of the yamas is aparigraha, which is an attitude of non-possessiveness, which is all about what we call vairagya in yoga, or renunciation, or not being attached to things, not being attached to people, not being possessive, not being greedy, not being jealous. All these aspects of I that I want to own or I identify with. But having a more carefree, more relaxed, more sharing, open attitude towards resources, to people, to possessions. So yama already, you could spend lifetimes on this probably. But we don't start with this in Heartfulness, and we'll come to that later on. But it's one of those steps in Ashtanga Yoga that's vital. Without this, without yama, nothing else will really work. So even from the beginning, it's important to be aware of these concepts and look at, how do I live my life? What do I want to work on? What is my continuous improvement at this moment in time? Is it that I need to be less angry, less irritated by others? Is it that I get too greedy or too jealous and I need to work on that? Is it that I go overboard with my senses? I indulge in food or sex or addictions in too many ways? Is it that I'm not truthful? I pretend to be one thing with one person, with my family members, something else at work, something else with my friends, that there's no transparency there? Or is it that I'm really not sharing and being honest about, you could say stealing, but also in taking things that belong to other people? So these are the yamas. It's a tall order, but it's the beginning. It's the first step. Can we move to the next slide, please, Lakshmi? And the next one are what are called the niyamas, the opposite, the development of noble qualities within us. And these are no less challenging, no less important, and again, the foundation of ethics. You know, I studied ethics at university for a while in the philosophy department, and I wish we'd have done it from this perspective when I did it, because it's so simple and it gives you such a good set of concepts to work with. It's a great idea for young people to look at this and figure out what it means for them. So the first one, saucha, purity of body and mind. And this is an important one because if you meditate without this, there's no sense of contentment, peace, balance in your meditation. If you go to work without this, same thing. If you try to do anything in life without purity of body and mind, you start on the back foot instead of the front foot. It's self-explanatory, purity of body and mind, but how do you get purity of mind? Of course, purity of body is something easy to conceive of. We all understand hygiene, the basis of good hygiene. But mind, how many of you clean your minds every day? How many of you are aware of what thoughts are passing through, what emotions are passing through? How many impurities have accumulated in your mind? We'll talk about this a bit later, because one of the key heartfulness practices is exactly for this purpose. Like you would take a shower every day for your body, we do cleaning every day for the mind. It's a maintenance program to prevent the accumulation of too much rubbish, too much heaviness, too many emotional burdens in your system, which of course leads to anxiety, depression, anger, fear, and confusion as a result. Second one of the niyamas, one of my favorites, it's beautiful, is santosh, contentment and inner happiness. But is this the happiness from getting something or having a good result in an exam or having got the job you want or something like that? Not really. Of course, those things can bring you an immense amount of happiness. But the problem with them is that they're temporary. And of course, when things go the other way and you don't get what you want, there's failure or something very sad happens. All of us have struggles with our children, for example, from time to time, with health, with their concerns with school, all these things. Do we have contentment and inner happiness then? No, because something has gone wrong on the outside. So when we talk about santosh, we're actually talking about something much deeper than that, that's within. A basic ability to be happy no matter what the circumstances are outside. And of course, again, that takes a lot of work. It's a very high state, but it's something we aspire to from the beginning in yoga. This idea of inner happiness that in fact is a state that is much more easily reached when we don't have desires and expectations. The third one is tapas, tapasya, you might have heard it called, which is generally in yoga known as penance, removal of impurities. And many people have the idea, like the Buddha, who went away to the forest and meditated under trees for days, years at a time, eating leaves and whatever he could find in the forest, or these yogis that go to ice caves in the Himalayas and just sit there meditating without any clothes on for days, months, years at a time. We're not talking about that sort of penance here. In fact, the teachers in the heartfulness system would tell you that the best penance, the most productive penance that you can undergo is family life. Normal, everyday, family, working, out there in the world type life. Because this is where you really have to work on yourself. This is where you really have to focus on continuous improvement, look at how you treat other people, how you behave even when you're in private. All these things. So penance, we're not talking here about something that's like an aesthetic way of life, but more about how we interact in the day-to-day world and how we grow through all the challenges, the problems, and the difficulties we face. Because these are actually the things that remove our impurities. Last two, I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to rush a little bit here.
Don't worry, Elizabeth. But yeah.
Okay.
You're actually, I'm enjoying
okay.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. Next one is Svadhyaya. And this is, again, super, super important. And this one, especially from the practical side. Why? Because Svadhyaya is the way we look at ourselves, the way we study ourselves, the way we focus on continuous improvement. You know, we're all a work in progress. We all have things we have to work on. And it can be very, very uncomfortable at times. We can really not want to look at our faults. You know, I've had a couple of days, the last couple of days, where I've felt incredibly uncomfortable with myself inside. And I don't know what it is yet. It's still unfolding. But there's something that's emerging. It's better today, so I know that we're moving somewhere, which is good. But it's a period where you know that there's something you have to work on. You don't necessarily know what it is yet. So what do? I write my diary. After I've meditated, I look at what's going on inside me. I scan my system. I try and understand if there's anything. And then in my interactions with people, I look at how I'm behaving and I try and see what needs to change. And the reason why Svadhyaya is so important is that most of our habits, most of all these things we need to change in ourselves are from our subconscious. They're not things we're even aware of. They've come from childhood, all the patterns we learned in our families, in our school, in our culture, etc. And we're not even aware we do them. So the only way they come to the fore, the only way they come into consciousness is when something happens or when we feel uncomfortable like I was the last 2 days and we have to go, you know what, something's not right here. Let me try and understand what it is and bring it to the fore. So Svadhyaya is important because without it, we get stuck big time. And it's also the way we can work on all these other aspects of ethics. Another aspect of Svadhyaya is reading of books too. Reading of works by great thought leaders, great thinkers, great sages, people we would admire and respect as a way of trying to learn how to become better ourselves. So that's the other aspect of it, and that's also really important. But one important thing here is to write a journal, if you can. Take the time out to look at yourself, warts and all. I know it's uncomfortable, but if you can do it without self-judgment, with a lot of self-compassion and self-acceptance, and just say, you know what, I'm here in this life to evolve. I'm here to become better and better and better. So let me look at all this stuff and try and do better. That's all it is. And then the very last one, which again, you know, if we can do this, we've achieved everything. Ishwar Pranidhan is surrender to God. Which means, and this is a huge topic which we won't have time to explain today, but it's about letting go of the ego. Letting go of I. Thinking that I am the master of this ship. I am the captain of this ship. I know everything there is to know about my life. And it helps a lot with Svadhyaya. Because as soon as you can let go and say, you know what, I'm not. I'm stuck with my own limitations. I'm stuck with my own creation, all these subconscious patterns, etc. I need to actually let go and let the divine be the captain of this ship, guide me. It's a very difficult concept if you're not used to it. And it can seem like weakness, but it's not. It's the most courageous thing that anybody can do in their lives, in fact. And some of the greatest heroes in history, in all fields, in all endeavors, have had to do this. And, you know, in Indian culture, one great being who is known for this is Hanumanji, with his surrender to Lord Rama. But there are many others. You know, if you look at Jesus Christ at the time he was being crucified, and he was nailed to the cross, you know, arms outstretched, feet nailed to the cross. And what did he say? Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. He wasn't trying to fight. He was surrendered. He was accepting that this is what had to happen. I mean, that's a very extreme version. We don't have to go out crucifying ourselves. But in little things, what happens when you surrender and accept that something needs to happen is then you can look at solving it. You can move on because you're no longer resisting. And when you're surrendering to the highest universal consciousness, then you have a real chance of being able to go somewhere in life. So, niyama again, it's not for the faint-hearted, but an incredible aspect of yoga to help any human being involved. You don't have to be religious, you don't have to be practicing yoga, nothing. When you just look at the concepts, they're mind-blowing and they're very evolutionary. So let's move on. Next one. Okay, next one is asana. And this one most of you will have heard of because it's the most popular and well-known aspect of yoga. So asana is interesting. It means sitting position, the word itself. It means to sit. The reason being that the first asanas were designed to help yogis attain the state of yoga, or oneness with the source, you can say, complete oneness. So they needed a posture that took them to their own center, their own source, rather than going outwards. They wanted their energies to turn inwards so that when they meditated, they could also focus inwards. Everything from now on, from asana onwards, in all these steps is all about turning inwards. So the very first asana, the first sutra that Patanjali writes in his Yoga Sutras about asana is the one that I've put here on this screen. Sthira Sukham Asanam. Steady, stable, comfortable, relaxed posture or sitting position. So that sitting position, which is steady and comfortable, is asana. And the idea is to turn the legs inwards so that the energies from the bottom of your body moving up are inwards and upwards for when you meditate. Arms in a very relaxed, interlocking position, because we don't want to dissipate energy here. We want the energy in our legs to be recycled through the system. If we have our legs out straight, the energy goes right out the feet, outwards, and we're trying to turn everything inwards. So our legs are inwards. If you sit on a chair, it's fine. Just cross your legs so that that recycling of energy is happening through your system. Same with your hands, gently clasped. And of course, eyes closed, because we dissipate about 80% of our energy during the day through our eyes when they're open. So all asana is about, traditionally, is sitting and turning your energy inwards for meditation. But then, of course, what happened, especially in the last 150 years, when yoga became more and more specialized and developed, and so much knowledge was accumulated in the field of asana. Actually, it started many thousands of years ago when the yogis realized that if they just sat with their eyes closed still, their bodies were going to just become non-functional. So they started doing a lot of different postures for the circulatory system, for the lymphatic system, for their muscles, for all the different organs in their system to stay healthy. And then in the last 150 years, that has developed enormously into various schools of Asana Yoga, like the Krishnamacharya school, the Bihar school, Shivanandam school, etc. And also with Heartfulness, we have Heartfulness Yoga, which covers all the asanas. So asana has expanded, but the original meaning is to sit and turn inwards, and that's what we're going to practice later. Next slide, Lakshmi. Next one, pranayama. Many of you would have heard of this also. Where does it come from? I'm sure many of you have heard of the word prana. And I'm going to read this Vivekananda quote here because it explains the importance of prana as one of the underlying things in the universe. So what did Swami Vivekananda say? He said, prana stands in metaphysics for the total sum of the energy that is in the universe. So if you imagine, as in physics, we have matter, we have energy, and then we have absolute space, vacuum, nothingness, the three states that physicists work with, especially in quantum physics. One of these, the middle one, the energy of the universe, is prana. This universe, according to the theory of the philosophers, proceeds in the form of waves, which is also what physicists found in the 20th century. It rises and again it subsides, melts away as it were. Then again it proceeds out in all this variety, and then again it slowly returns. So it goes on like a pulsation, waves of energy. The whole of this universe is composed of matter and force, matter and energy. And according to Sanskrit philosophers, everything that we call matter and force, everything that we call matter, solid and liquid, is the outcome of one primal matter, which they call Akash or ether, the original space that was there before creation. And the primordial force, of which all the forces that we see in nature are manifestations, they call prana. So we have Akash and we have prana. And it is this prana acting upon Akash which creates this universe. And after the end of a period called a cycle, there is a period of rest. One period of activity is followed by a period of rest. This is the nature of everything. And in us, this is also the nature of our breath. So when we work with pranayama, we're working with the energy movements in the human system, the energy body, the upward movements, the downward movements, the circulatory movements, the digestive, all these different movements, or what are called vayus in the human system in yoga, are part of pranayama. But mostly what we do with it is we work through our breathing, because this is where we connect very strongly with these flows of energy. And of course, somebody who is an expert in pranayama, a yogi, would say that most human beings today don't know how to breathe. Pranayama, in the sense of heartfulness and going deep in meditation, is just simply to regulate your breath down to an inward focus. And this we'll practice before we start meditation. But it's also really a very good thing to learn some simple pranayama exercises. And for those of you who are interested, you can go online and look at Baba Ramdev's 5 basic pranayama exercises that he teaches, which will soon be available as guided practices on the Heartfulness website, so you can soon find them there. But one of the simple ones is known as Anilom Vilom, and it's an incredibly simple but very, very effective way to just energize your system, clean your sinuses, expand your lungs, and rejuvenate yourself physically for the day. And all it requires is just a thumb and some fingers and your nostrils and breathing. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and you can practice this afterwards. We don't have time now, but it's as simple as this: starting with your right thumb over your right nostril, breathing in all the way down to your abdomen. Deep breaths in, not hunching your shoulders, but going down into your system. And breathing out through the right nostril. Swapping sides. In through the right nostril, out through the left. In through the left nostril, out through the right. Simple. If you do it standing or even sitting before meditation, it will bring a lot of clarity and alertness to your mind as well, because you're oxygenating your system, you're balancing the two sides of your body, the Surya and Chandra Nadi, also the two sides of your brain. It has some incredible effects. So pranayama is an art in itself, and again, like asana, it's developed enormously over the last 150 years. There are pranayama specialists in yoga. In heartfulness, I wouldn't call us specialists. We tend to be more generalist, focused on the goal of yoga towards the end. But it's something to explore if you're interested. Next one, Lakshmi. So up till now, we've focused on our ethics, our behavior, our physical body, posture, physical health, and our breathing, our energetic health. Now we're going to start to look at how we turn inwards towards the goal of yoga. And this step of Prachahar is the one that's most often overlooked, both by Hatha yogis and Raja yogis. Hatha yogis don't even consider the senses most of the time, and neither do people who meditate. And then they wonder why they're distracted and focused, distracted by everything outside and not focused on what's going on inside. So this is incredibly important, because the thing that distracts us more often than not, when we're working, when we're trying to sleep, when we're trying to think about anything, is our senses being pulled by the outside world. And what Patanjali says here is that when the indriyas, the sense organs, cease to be engaged with their corresponding external manifestations and turn inwards to the field of consciousness from which they arose, this is the fifth step called Prachahar. Through that turning inward of the organs of the senses and actions also comes a supreme ability, controllability, and mastery over those senses that otherwise go outward towards their objects. So this is an incredibly important aspect of yoga, being able to turn inwards and center yourself, being able to find your stillness in the center of your being, which is the first thing that we look to try and do when we meditate. Not being distracted by the smell of coffee in the kitchen first thing in the morning, or the noise of, people outside or whatever. It's a real art. Thankfully, in Heartfulness, we have an incredible tool to help with this, and that's called transmission. Because transmission pulls us inwards. It allows us, it gives us a support to do this. So we're not as disturbed by our senses. And you'll see a diagram over on the left here also, which is a diagram showing heart on the left-hand side and Atma chakra, soul chakra, on the right-hand side. What happens in Heartfulness is that as we practice and as we progress, the energy that comes down through the cosmic part of the human system, which normally would go to the heart and out into the world, some of this, not all of it obviously, because we need to live in the world, some gets diverted to the soul chakra, so that there's this ability to center ourselves, to go very still into the center of our heart, into the soul. So you get an enormous amount of support with this in heartfulness, which would be very, very difficult to do otherwise, would require a lot of self-mastery. Next one, Lakshmi. And now we start on what we call meditation. Raja Yoga, it's known as in yoga. Samyama, it's the 3 steps that we would call meditation normally. So what are they very simply? There's dharan, which is being able to think about one thing. So bringing our thoughts from scattered thinking to single-pointed thinking. A lot of people think that's the definition of meditation. It's not. It's dharana. It's this ability to focus on one thought. The second step is dhyana, which is meditation. So what happens after we've gone from scattered, multifaceted thinking to single-pointed thought? This becomes the object of our meditation. In heartfulness, what we think about is the source of light in our heart that's drawing us inwards. There are many different objects of meditation, but this is the one we use in heartfulness. That's our dharan, if you like. But then when we go into meditation, we don't stay at the thinking level. We want to dive deeper and go down to a feeling level, and eventually go beyond even the experience of feeling to where we become one with that state, which is Samadhi. And that's the sequence that happens in meditation, especially if you're meditating with transmission. So that's the general idea. Of course, I'm cutting short on that because we're going to experience that part of it. And this part of it, the samyama part, is heartfulness. And I think the best thing now, if you think it's the right time, Lakshmi, is we try this experience. We
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's okay?
Yeah.
So we'll walk through basically as we prepare for meditation, all the 8 steps. We'll go and we'll do a short meditation together.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, hopefully we'll have time for questions and answers.
Sure.
Okay, so I want you all to put your mobile phones somewhere away from you, preferably switched off. Make sure they're not distracting you. And you can tell the other people in your household, if there's a lot going on around you, that you're going to do a meditation now. So to just give you a few minutes of peace, leave you alone for a little while. And now I want you to sit in a very relaxed position, either with your legs crossed, or if you're sitting on a chair or a sofa like me, with them simply wrapped around each other. Your hands in a relaxed position, clasped in your lap. And now think about yama and niyama. Think about your character, your tendencies, and see if you can just clear out any negative complexities you might feel about yourself before we start meditation. Try and clear the decks a little bit so that you're not burdened by anything that you should have done or should not have done during the day. Let it go for now. We can teach you how to do cleaning later so that you can really get rid of it. But for now, try and purify your mind as much as possible. See if you can have noble thoughts rather than negative thoughts. If you're already a heartful practitioner, you may just want to clean for a minute or two to remove anything that's stuck in your system. And while that's going on, turn to your posture. Adjust your posture the best you can. Make sure your legs are crossed, Your arms are relaxed in your lap. Your eyes are closed. And very importantly, that your back is upright without being rigid. It's very important that your spine is straight so that you have coherence between your brain and your heart. Because the central nervous system that runs from your tailbone all the way up through your brain is associated with all the chakras, with your whole human system. And all of these are balanced during meditation. Especially, we want the mind to be in sync, in coherence with the heart. So having your upper back straight without being rigid is very important. And now turn to your breathing. Is your breathing relaxed, deep, and open all the way down into your abdomen? Don't worry too much, because with the transmission, with the prana ahuti, the prana in your system will anyway become balanced. But it's good just to note before you start that you're breathing in a relaxed way. Now let's turn to Prachahar, to our senses. See if you can visualize turning all your senses inwards to your field of consciousness. Your eyes are closed, but with your ears, sense of smell, touch and taste, let them all turn inwards. Try to bring them to the center of your being. In Heartfulness, we do this through prayer also. But for now, just imagine that you're focusing on the center of your being, which is in your heart. And now we're going to meditate, starting with Dharan. And what is that Dharan? What is that one thought that we bring our attention to? It is that the source of light that is already present within our heart is drawing us inwards. If other thoughts come, just gently let them go. Try not to pay them too much attention, and gently go back to this thought. But don't feel that you have to stay with this thought. Don't concentrate on it. Dharan is just a stepping stone. The next step is to try to experience that source of light that's already present in your heart, to feel it within you. And that is dhyan, that is meditation. And meditation will take you deeper and deeper and deeper until eventually you will become one with that source of light in your heart. You will attain the state of Samadhi. And of course, there are many states of Samadhi depending on your elevation. But for now, just think of it as the outcome of becoming one with that source of light in your heart. So now we're going to meditate. We'll meditate for about 10 minutes, and after that, we'll follow with a few questions. So please start meditation. That's all. Take your time before you open your eyes to scan your whole system. Just see how you feel, especially how you feel in your heart. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
It was a very, very deep meditation. And this is the tough part, right? Like I just coming out of it and, just carrying on.
Yeah.
And
For me also.
Part, which is a question answer session, but we've got to do that.
Yes, it's okay.
I just wanted to say, you're like, at least talking for myself, I was familiar with Ashtanga Yoga and I've read Daji's articles in the Heartfulness magazine about it. But listening to you speak about it, it was so beautiful. Like I felt like you spoke directly to my heart. It felt like you're one of those teachers, I've had in my universities. Several of them we have, but there's always that one teacher who, somehow imprints all their teaching into the student's mind. It felt like that to me. And, at the same time, there was a stillness in the heart that I was able to understand and feel, from the heart. So really thank you for that.
Welcome.
It's a great beginning of my day, so a very wonderful beginning.
And really, when you get it, it's so simple.
True.
Yeah. It really just is about holistic living.
As you rightly said, it is true. That's exactly what was going on as well. It's all these things. Sometimes the other thing that I was thinking was there are times when people may not actually be aware of it, but there may be people who are actually putting all of these, limbs of Ashtanga Yoga into practice.
Yes.
That can be a beautiful thing too, right?
Oh, it's astounding. I mean, the science behind this blows me away.
Yeah.
Also. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we will move on to the question answer session. So if you're ready, the first question is, now this is a question I wanted to ask you. In Sahaj Marg or in heartfulness practice, it does not take up the different steps of Ashtanga Yoga one by one separately. Under the system, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are all taken up simultaneously during the course of meditation or dhyana. This is actually Daji's, quote. Daji is the world leader of heartfulness for those people who are not familiar with him. So can you explain why, Elizabeth?
Yes. So Patanjali wrote these way back a few thousand years ago. And back then, they were taken in step, in order. And if you read many of the older texts, they talk about doing them in order. But imagine if you had to first arrive at all these things like Ahimsa and Satya, etc., without being able to meditate. I mean, I would still be struggling, and I'm sure most of us would be, to get to that level. So when Babaji came back in the end of the 19th century and started teaching people at the beginning of the 20th century. He revolutionized the whole of yogic practice because he said something really critical. He said, let's start with meditation, because once you can regulate your mind, then you'll be able to do all these other steps better. It's not that we don't do them, we have to do them. It's essential to focus on yama and niyama, for example, in order to evolve and become a whole human being. No question about it. If your mind is regulated, you've got a chance of being able to do it. If you've got to do it without that support, and especially without the support of transmission to help you in meditation, and the heartfulness cleaning, which is constantly removing the impressions that are forming in your subconscious. And this is a hugely revolutionary aspect of modern yoga, which was never there before. And it's the reason why I think yoga is now at the full level, up to the complete goal of yoga, is available to everybody now. It's a massive revolution, because with heartfulness cleaning, what are we doing? We're getting rid of the root cause of all our tendencies, all our negative thinking, all our behaviors, etc., from the subconscious mind. And in the past, this was very, very difficult. People went to hypnotists to do it, for example. If they wanted to give up smoking, or they had terrible tendencies that they wanted to get rid of, they went to a hypnotist, because how else did you do it? But now with heartfulness cleaning, you sit every evening and you're removing all the impressions that have formed in your system. And then when you go to a trainer, the trainer's removing back the impressions from previous times as well, so that all these tendencies, all these behaviors, all these ethical dilemmas we face inside ourselves, they fall off. And this is something incredible. And if you had to start with yama and niyama without the help of this, I think it would be too hard. So the modern era of yoga is about using these practices to help us with the whole 8 steps. It's not that we don't have to do them, but it becomes so much easier to do them when we have this as a support to allow us to change. Because the whole idea of the heartfulness practices is that when you learn to meditate with transmission, you can focus your mind. You can go into the feeling level. You can go all the way down to Samadhi, to oneness with that state, in the very first sitting sometimes. I mean, that's just, and people can measure it. They can measure the delta brain waves that normally you would find only in deep sleep while the person's meditating in that very first sitting. And that's just astounding.
Profound, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
There was one question, connected with this one. As you're talking, I was thinking I will ask that, because I think this was from Maribeth, and she was asking, how can we apply Ashtanga Yoga to one's daily lives? And do we have to follow the order? Can we mix it up?
No. I mean, it's very helpful, for example, to get your asana right before you start meditation. That's one that is sort of important. If you try and meditate and you're all slouchy and you're all over the place and you're like this or whatever, it's not going to be very effective.
Yeah.
So, there are a few things that do matter, but on the whole, no. We start with meditation and then we work on the others, but we don't forget about them.
It's beautiful, and it's nice to know that it's integrated, right? Everything is integrated, and you focus on the mind and the heart, and everything else is kind of taken care of.
Yeah. This mind-heart coherence is incredible.
Yeah. Now, this is a question that I think, especially the new ones can relate to, and this is from Carolina. Now, I don't have the self-discipline to follow a structured practice, yet I want to try. How do I approach this?
Okay, good question. Very good question. Probably relevant to 90% of humanity at least.
That's right.
Carolina, you've asked it on behalf of everybody. So where's a good place to start? Okay, to be disciplined, getting up in the morning. I mean, if you really want to do this properly, you would get up, you would finish your meditation before dawn, you would meditate for an hour, you would do cleaning in the evening at sunset, you would do a bedtime prayer before you go to sleep, and you would be very regular in a biological rhythm. Because the way our system works is in circadian rhythms, daily rhythms. Our energy flows, I spoke about pranayama before, our energy flows are in tune with the natural daily circadian rhythms. But in the beginning, most of us aren't together with all this. So what do? The best thing is to fix one set time every morning to meditate. It could be 7 o'clock, it could be 5 o'clock, it could even be 9 o'clock, but make it regular. Even if you can only meditate for 5 minutes at that time, it's still the first thing to try and get disciplined is your timing. Because what happens when you do that? It's like eating breakfast or, going to the bathroom or something. Once you're in a rhythm, your whole system, your body, your mind, everything expects that rhythm. So if you meditate at the same time every day, you will go into meditation much faster. Because your whole system's waiting to go into meditation, even if it's at 9 o'clock. So you fix your timing first. Once you've got that down, then look at the length of how long you meditate. Start with 5 minutes, it's okay. Start with whatever works. But try and build it up over time so that you can meditate for at least half an hour. Never more than an hour. But, sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you're just too restless, but you do your best at it. Similarly with cleaning, create a regular time if you can. Although certainly for women who are mothers, who are working, that's not so easy. Dinner time has to be one of the hardest times of the day for a woman to find a regular time and have everybody else leave her in peace. So you just do your best. But it's all about interest and willingness. Are you interested in having a sense of well-being and a holistic lifestyle? If you are, find the time to do this. Even if it's 5-10 minutes here and there, make it the same time every day if you can, and do your best. Nobody's watching you with this. Nobody's waving the finger and saying you have to do this. It's all your own self-discipline, which is why it's hard in a way, because we're not all trained to be good at self-discipline. But even that in itself will help you evolve. You just do your best, and the more you do it, the more you'll want to do it. The more benefits you'll get.
Awesome, thank you. Now this is a question from Sonia. How can we merge love into our meditation?
Ha! They're picking some good ones. All right. What is love? Okay. I mean, there are many levels to the highest, which is what we're aspiring for. But love starts with interest again. When you're in love, think about when you've ever been in love. What happens to you? You're so alive. You're full of joy. You're full of the joys of spring, as everybody says. And everything you do has that quality about it, which is alive. So same thing. Are you interested in meditation? Do you want to explore what this has to offer? You've all probably remember as children going on treasure hunts. How exciting it is. Where is the next clue? And what am I going to find? And what's the treasure at the end of it? There's so much interest to move you forward. Similarly, if you're reading a really good book, I have this terrible tendency, if there's a book that I enjoy, of staying up all night till it's finished. Why? Because I get so engrossed in the storyline if it's good, and I just want to finish it. Which is not very disciplined, I know, but it's because I get passionate about it and I want to read and I want to know what happens. Similarly, imagine in meditation that you go to bed at night and you think, wow, tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I am going to meet my maker. I have an appointment tomorrow morning in meditation with my maker. And that is something of great interest to you. Do you think it's possible for love not to develop in that circumstance? And the more you have experience, the more incredible it is, the more drawn you are to want to proceed. It may not start with love, though. It may just start with the experience and interest and like, whoa, this is nothing I know about. But the more you do it and the more gratitude you feel for the way you change. Like you said in the beginning, Lakshmi, it's changed your life. It's changed my life too. And I feel so grateful to have a series of simple techniques, simple life skills that have turned my life completely around. That love automatically develops with that. And after some time you want to know, where's this come from? Who's behind all this? What's the transmission all about? And then you start to explore. So it will evolve naturally.
Beautiful answer, Elizabeth. I simply loved it. So thank you again, for that. Now, this question also, I'm really wanting to know your answer. Now, this is from Dhruv. There is a special relationship to food in many cultures. And we understand that it is also energy to body, mind, and spirit.
Yes.
How does that fit in Ashtanga Yoga?
Oh, this is another big topic. All right. What is food? Like you said, food is energy. Food is something we take into our system that is going to get metabolized, and the vibrations of that, as well as the nutrients, are going to move into all our cells and feed us, nourish us on the physical level, as well as on the energetic level, the pranic level, and even equally as much, if not more so, on the level, the divine level, the most subtlest of vibrations. So whatever food we take in will have an impact on all three levels. Now, imagine the impact of food that is very heavy, that has maybe been frozen for months, that has been stored on shelves, irradiated for long periods of time, that is highly processed. Just visualize for yourself. You don't have to think too much. What sort of vibration will that food have? And how will it affect my system physically, in terms of nutrition, energetically, and even more subtly? And compare that with something that is incredibly fresh picked fruit, for example, or fresh picked herbs straight from the garden, still full of the life force. And the lighter the food, the impact on your system, I don't think it takes much imagination to figure out what the difference is. So always the sort of food we take in has a big impact on us, and nutritionists will tell you this. There's another aspect of it too. It's how we prepare the food, how we eat the food. Because our thoughts, imagine you're sitting at the dining table with your family and you're all eating and you're deep in the midst of a horrible argument. And the person who's cooked, whether it's the mother, the father, the son, the daughter, or whatever, has been in an incredibly bad mood the whole time they're cooking. Imagine what sort of vibration that food will have. And if you're all sitting there eating it, arguing, you'll all end up with indigestion at the end of it. Compare that with a family dinner where the food has been prepared and cooked with so much love and eaten with so much love and gratitude I mean, the difference on your system will be like night and day. It
True.
will be remarkable. One of the aspects in yoga, which is partly dependent on where it originated, but also again on this aspect of lightness, and there's a whole philosophy behind that, is that vegetarian food tends to be much better for your spiritual growth, easier on your system because of its lightness than non-vegetarian food. But even within vegetarian food, there's heavier and there's lighter. There's all levels of energy.
Sattvic food, right?
Sattvic food, exactly. Sattvic food. So, you know, the whole theory, the whole philosophy of food as energy, as a resource, how we take it in, but also even the means with which the food is purchased. Imagine that you buy food with black money. Even that will impact the vibration of the food. So you can go to many, many levels when you look at this, because again, you know, whatever is in that food, whatever energy has gone into that food, we're taking into our system and it's going into all our cells. This topic could go on for hours, but that's another day.
Yeah, true. So, but I'm enjoying, as you're saying, and as you're saying, you know, there was this thought coming in my mind that the more lighter and the more pure it is, it really helps us, because what we're trying to do in yoga is to become purer and simpler,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
yeah, and a great point on, you know, when you explained about the vegetarian food as well. And on that lighter note, I was also thinking I should share something that you said to my children, because often, you know, parents complain that children love to eat restaurant food and there's
Yes.
indigestion and all sorts of problems the next day. So that's a good point that we can tell them, that it also depends on how, with what kind of thoughts and intentions the food is being prepared in the restaurant, right? And there needs to be purity in that as well. So, you know.
There's an amazing Hollywood movie about this called Simply Irresistible.
Oh, is it right? Okay.
Oh, it's fabulous. And it's exactly all about this.
Is it right? I'll go and watch
Yeah.
it.
I won't spoil the story, but watch it with your kids.
I will. Thank you. Thank you for suggesting that. So this is a question from Mike. How is yoga different from stretching or other kinds of fitness?
Well, one of the 8 limbs that we've spoken about, asana, could be understood as stretching, because certainly we do stretch. It's one aspect of asana. But the famous yoga teacher from the 20th century, B.K.S. Iyengar, one of his classic statements was that asana without the soul is a waste of time. Why? Because the aim of it is not just for physical fitness. It's one aspect of it. But asana without focusing on your center, without being aware of your field of consciousness, is a very limited view of asana. So think of it as physical activity for mind, body, and soul, if that makes sense. And you'll understand why it's not just stretching. You could say the same about Qigong and a lot of other martial arts. They're not just for the physical body.
Thank you. Now this is the last question, and this is from Ganga, and she's asking, is yoga a religion?
Not at all. I mean, the thing is that yoga uses Sanskrit terminology because that's where it originated. But it's not a religion.
Yeah.
It is a science, you can say, or the science of spirituality. Babaji, one of the main and the first president of our organization and the second Heartfulness teacher, he called it the science of reality. And he said, you know, religion is, if you like, a first step on your journey. Religion helps you to understand the precepts and to think about God and to practice different things. But ultimately that's at the thinking level, like we talked about in meditation. You go from thinking to experiencing. You can't just think about God or believe in God, because that's not going to take you anywhere. That's not what yoga is. The next step is to experience God directly, and this is the field of spirituality. But that's also not the end. The next step after that is, if you like, to go to a state of being with that, to go beyond experience into samadhi that we spoke about, where we become one with the state, or where we experience God in a much deeper way, which is what's known as reality. But that also is not the end. As Babaji says, we go beyond that to the bliss of the soul, the joy of the soul, of experiencing that directly, and then eventually to the nothingness, the negation state behind that, which is the real deal. That's where we're really headed in yoga. So yoga's here, and religion's at the starting, basically the beginning of the race, and yoga's at the end of the race. So there's a long way between them.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Today was really an holistic experience on the whole. A very heartfelt webinar. And thank you for your time and for doing this webinar on the Pearl platform. It's actually is this your second webinar on Pearl?
Yes.
So, very grateful, very grateful. Thank you so much. Namaste to you and to all the audience who are, tuned in today. I hope whatever Elizabeth had shared on Ashtanga Yoga, you find it beneficial and we are able to practice it in our everyday life. And certainly heartfulness gives us the tools to do that very beautifully as well.
Yes.
Any last words for our audience, Ed?
Only thank you, Lakshmi. It's always such a pleasure to interact with you. I always enjoy it very much, and I feel the heart in these webinars because of your presence here. So thank you also, and to all the good vibes of the audience, which are very much felt as well.
Yeah,
thanks.
True.
And bye.
Bye, everyone. So take care. I look forward to seeing you all in the next webinar. So until then, hang in there, be safe, eat with gratitude, love everyone around, and practice meditation and yoga, and have a holistic and happy life. Bye, everyone.